Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chrysalis this afternoon. This is our final broadcast for the year, so we are so glad that all of you guys were able to sign on. We're going to do our usual half an hour of really great updates about what's going on at Chrysalis, and we also have some extra special guests from the Orange County Business Council to talk about the recently released indicators report and what that means for our region, how it might apply to Chrysalis and our Chrysalis community. As a quick reminder, please do use our chat feature throughout in the presentation right now. Submit questions as they come up. We're definitely going to save some time at the end for a little Q&A with Natalie, Jesse, and Mark. And also, we do post these to our YouTube channel by Friday after this presentation, and we make sure to add closed captions to that. So with that, I'm going to go off screen, and if Mark is ready, I'm going to ask him to come on. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, thanks, Valerie. I appreciate it. And hello, everybody. It's great to virtually see all of you. We've been doing these broadcasts now for, it seems like 12 years, but it's actually only been about a year and a half. We wanted to have some additional touch points with our community since we can't do the traditional in-person things that we've done in the past to keep you up to date on what's happening at Chrysalis. So it's great to see so many of you back again today. So that you have a sense of what's going on at Chrysalis, although the background behind me is our Orange County office. I'm physically in our downtown LA office today, and it is busy. This is the busiest I've seen it since March 12th, 2020. We've got a bunch of clients in here. Our doors are open. We are providing direct services to clients in a socially distanced and safe way in accordance with all of the regulations, but it feels really, really great to have activity in all of our Chrysalis centers. And there's some really cool innovation going on as well. We've spoken before on these broadcasts on how we've tried to learn from everything we've done over the last 18 months to provide a better experience for our clients and for our staff. And we're just trying a lot of new stuff. So for example, in Orange County tomorrow, or maybe it's Thursday, we're having an event where we're inviting new clients to come to the office, and we are going to do a one-day program experience for them so that essentially they'll complete all the key elements of our program in a single day and be eligible to work in Chrysalis Enterprises or for our direct hire program very, very quickly. We're going to try a lot of different things across all of our offices to make sure that we can get LA and Orange County back working again. And it's really relevant that is really the topic of what we're going to spend our time with for the next 25 minutes or so. We are really delighted to have two experts on what's going on in our regional economy from the Orange County Business Council. And I would like to introduce them now. Natalie and Jesse, if you could come on screen. Natalie is the Chief Operating Officer for the Orange County Business Council, and she also happens to be a member of our Advisory Council in Orange County. And Jesse Benram is the OCBC's Vice President of Workforce and Economic Development. So welcome, Natalie, and welcome, Jesse.
Hi, Mark.
Yes,
happy to be here.
There. Great. It's great to have you. Thanks for taking some time this afternoon. So this is Chrysalis, and one of our traditions is we like to know, introduce yourself and your role, and what was your first job? Natalie, let's start with you.
My name is Natalie Rubakova. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Orange County Business Council, which is a local nonprofit that advocates on behalf of business in this region. And my first job, I won't mention the volunteer work I did for 7-Eleven cleaning up their parking lot, but my first official job was a cashier at a local hardware store.
Retail, everybody's favorite.
Yep. Customer service.
Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Jesse Benron, VP of Workforce and Economic Development here at Orange County Business Council. But I'm not always, I work for Natalie is another way to say what my job is. My first job, I think if you want to say a job that you actually got paid for, I was fortunate to be a research assistant. I got my MBA at Cal State Fullerton, and I got to work on a study analyzing Orange County businesses and how they perform in the stock market compared to the S&P 500.
Okay, so now I know why you do the job that you do and why you are with us on today's panel. So, what really inspired us asking both of you to join us today is the indicators report that is published annually by the OCBC. Jesse, maybe you can give us a sense of what is this thing? It's a huge body of work, and there's a history to it. Help us understand what this thing is and how can we use it? Because there's a lot of good stuff there. And I believe that Mallory just posted a link to it in the chat for those that want to check it out.
Yeah, I'd like to actually, combo this question with Natalie here.
Oh yeah, Natalie was going to answer. See, we rehearsed this thing for hours yesterday, and Natalie is going to take this from my fault.
Yeah, Natalie, please.
No, it's Jesse and I are well versed on the community indicators report, but the intention behind the report is really to help measure the indicators, whether it's good or bad. How are we doing on housing in the region? How are we doing on food sustainability? And it's really, it should help our partners in the county really measure success or identify areas where we need to do better. So that is really the reason behind businesses support. And we do partner with other nonprofits, including First Five, which has a vested interest in children, United Way, and Orange County Community Foundation, as well as CalOptima. So, and Jesse, anything to add? I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Wallace Walrod, who is really the economic, our expert at OCBC, who authors this report along with his team. And we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, I would just add that, again, I'm not quite sure how many other regions do something exactly like this. Generally, the business community will do a report on the economy. And then, social services will do a report, or the nonprofits just on the nonprofits. And it's not like those sectors here still do that stuff too, but to bring it all together in maybe one comprehensive package, again, which is why I think it's like 180 pages long, maybe a little bit more. That's like helpful. And I think it also speaks to, again, the collaborative nature of Orange County and trying to tackle some of these problems, because it's not just one community or the other to handle it. It's really all of our responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mark, I also, one of the things based on what Jesse said, I came from for-profit business, and we were always competing for revenue from out of state, whether it was a national company. The indicators report is utilized by businesses to really help tell the story of Orange County as well. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure that businesses aware, as well as nonprofits, that it's a tool to obtain funding to help solve some of the issues that we have.
And try to grow our economy and our workforce right here in our backyard. So Jesse, your workforce is your thing. That's what you specialize in. And this year, of the 180 pages in the report, there is a new section. There's this thing called COVID-19 out there. I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but the report added a specific section about COVID-19 and the impact it's had on the economy and the workforce specifically. And a bit about who we serve at Chrysalis, folks that have faced systemic barriers to being able to get back to work. Can you comment a little bit about what the report is telling us about workforce and the economy as it relates to COVID-19 specifically?
Yeah, I think it's probably best just to take that chronologically, right? So during the pandemic, particularly maybe the sectors that are important to Chrysalis and your clients, it wasn't necessarily all bad. It was a mixed bag, right? Because in some sectors, like if you are working at the grocery store, like they actually needed a lot of employment. If you're doing warehouse and transportation, more people were buying more and more things on e-commerce. So a lot of those jobs, or maybe if you, again, even in the gig economy, right? I mean, if you're doing kind of Instacart, those opportunities became a greater abundance because people weren't going out. On the other hand, though, if you were kind of in hospitality or something, right? Or if you're working at a restaurant, that was tough. So in some ways, maybe from the kind of the most fiercest part of COVID, there was kind of a reshuffling, at least at that level, of what opportunities were available to you. The point we're at now, it probably could never have been a better time, right? Like there's a real shortage of talent. It's being talked about constantly. I mean, not only locally, but in kind of the national news. And so now there's a real opportunity kind of wherever your industry sector is, particularly, again, the industries that Chrysalis kind of your clients and you try to help support. Pretty much all of those are hiring rapidly and are having trouble finding people, which is, again, a real opportunity because now they're maybe more open-minded and they really should have been far before the pandemic. But now, because of the shortage of talent or labor, they're really open-minded to these alternatives to try to find people to do the work. And now, again, your clients can now prove what they probably could have already done. They're now given the opportunity to do the work, again, that they were always capable of doing. So at the current moment, things are ripe. So you should be very optimistic. The long-term trend and the impact, particularly some of those things are weaved in with automation, AI, kind of greater adoption of technology, that's troubling all the way around. And then to be candid, it's most difficult probably, and the most pressure will be on what we'd consider maybe lower wage work. And so what you'd have to think about is, getting people employed absolutely in the immediate term. People need to house themselves and feed themselves today. But longer term, the automation, AI, jobs that are just far more, again, if your job is routine all the time, you're very vulnerable to kind of automation AI. The need to always think about your job either needs to change, or you need to understand that you need to be learning new things to get other jobs, because jobs will either go away or they'll be transformed in some form or fashion. So what's called like lifelong learning is going to be a critical skill. Gone are the days where you could work at a factory, right out of, well, not even go to college, get that factory job, work there, then collect your pension once you retire. So you will constantly need to be adaptive and flexible. Jobs where you're always trying to solve problems or think critically, those are really the jobs that are still going to be available. And a lot of the jobs that we see, again, at the entry level, the lower wage level, is really going to get impacted with automation AI in the longer term. So please, obviously, get that job now, work now, but understand that it's only the first step of many as we kind of move into the future here.
Thanks for that. It's something that we have always prided ourselves in, is the ability to help folks get that first job and prepare them with the soft skills in particular that help develop emotional intelligence and collaboration skills, teamwork skills. And those are an absolute necessity, but they're not sufficient, or they won't be sufficient, right? You need that next level of, on top of that, let's build the skills, the technical skills, the vocational skills that are necessary to compete with a robot or a machine that may not be here today, but could easily be here in 2 to 5 years.
Right. Well, and that's the personal touch is you can't replace that with automation, right? Even for a business, a person can upsell, but a computer really can't. And Jesse also touched a little bit on, you mentioned the soft skills. So as an advisory council member for Chrysalis, one of the things I was able to do was take training classes and help build resumes. And a lot of the training that I was able to give as well is on the soft skills side, right? How to respond during an interview and stuff like that, which is really important when you're doing customer facing jobs. And Jesse mentioned tourism was hit really hard, and the COVID section will really help outline that. And with Orange County, tourism and hospitality is our #1 employment sector. And that is also an area that your Chrysalis clients would find gainful employment. And as we start to see that recovery period coming back slowly but surely, we're not at full capacity, but we do know that our employers in the area are still looking for talent. And that's when Chrysalis comes into play to really help fill that pipeline.
I've heard the stat cited that Disneyland was closed for 417 days. And that has such tremendous, as an example of the impacts of businesses, has so many tremendous impacts throughout the community. So another section of the report focuses on household income. And the good news is that Orange County has a median household income, I think, of $96,000, which is terrific. It's higher than the state of California, higher certainly than the national average. But the report also peels back that number to show that there are some really significant issues and examples of poverty in the region. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, Orange County, not like anywhere else. Actually, I would say Orange County has a lot of good things going for it. I think it's probably one of the best places to live in the country, maybe even the world. That being said, it's not only good things happening in Orange County, and some of the success kind of begets some of these thornier, more stubborn and sensitive issues. So, I mean, yes, like the poverty statistic listed was, 11%, which is, generally lower than kind of a lot of other counties in the region. but let's just, I'll be honest, like that doesn't include cost of living, right? And so we wanted to make an apples to apples comparison. So of course we kind of use kind of the federal definition of the poverty level. Other people kind of done this analysis, and if you include cost of living, that number is closer to 19%. So almost 1 in 5. And so again, back to, there's this incredible amount of, even that $96,000 statistic that you listed is great. And it is higher than the state, it is higher than the national average. But when housing, and I think we're going to talk about that even more at length a little bit later, when housing is, 50% higher, what's a 20% higher kind of median household income, right? And so the cost of living, so that's really a reflection of the cost of living, but also it's not really catching up, in my opinion, with the cost of living. So that's just, again, that's the median. So that's the 50%. So let's, again, to your point, let's talk about that 20% in poverty. We have the other data in there, a little over 20% of households are making less than $45,000 a year, which is, again, let's look at that relative to what it costs to live here. So that means if that household, if you're even, again, renting a 2-bedroom apartment, that has to come in, I'd be shocked if you can kind of get one under $2,000, right? So if you were that family, that means half of your income is just in rent alone. This is why you see, I think you probably see multiple, a family per bedroom, let's say, right? So that's why they can kind of mitigate the cost. But that's kind of what's happening. And it kind of speaks to the diverse industry sectors, right? So we have very much high tech, advanced manufacturing, healthcare. Those are great paying jobs that drive the median household income up. But but those people need stuff. Those people need to go out to eat. Those people want to have fun. And that's where then, the other sectors emerge, where we have kind of hospitality and tourism, you have retail, you have kind of food accommodations, and those don't. And so you kind of see that if you're going to have your job close to where you work, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to do so. And also, again, that number doesn't reflect, we could survey how many people live in Riverside and San Bernardino, would like to live in Orange County or LA, but can't afford it, right? So those incomes potentially would be on the lower end. And they're just deciding that I'm just going to drive an hour and a half or 2 hours a day in order to kind of make my living and still make ends meet. So I think that's kind of, again, Orange County has a robust amount, a very large amount of high skilled work that just naturally drives the cost of living. Right. So again, if you're a C-suite, you're going to pick wherever you want to live in Orange County. As you move farther down the ladder, I would say even like Natalie and myself, although a lot of that's preferential, like we live in Anaheim, but our job is in Irvine, which could be an hour commute at times, because I would say even like the Irvine market and some of those surrounding markets are very expensive, maybe even I would say out of our price range to afford. So then what do? Like, we're then going to say, well, we're going to, live in Anaheim, or we're going to live in other parts of Orange County. And so the person then who, has to kind of clean the office that we work at, then they're pushed out even further. And that's why you have people kind of get a lot of people living in Riverside and San Bernardino County. So I think you kind of see a lot of that. Again, the successes are also driving some of those issues that are driving poverty, high cost of living, and people struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah, and Jesse, you're clearly drawing the line between, or the connection between income, poverty, and housing. Natalie, maybe you can talk a bit about what the report is telling us about housing.
So yeah, you mentioned that our median household income is $96,000. Just to kind of break it down at an hourly wage. So just for a person to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, for example, in Orange County, they'd have to make at least $36 an hour. So, we're
minimum wage in Orange County is?
Minimum wage in Orange County right now, I think, and Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's $17 right now, right? Or it's about to go up?
No, it's like closer to 14.
14.
I think it depends on the year of implementation.
14 going to 15 on January 1st.
Yeah, 15 on January 1st. And then we do have a lot of employers, especially in Anaheim, who automatically increase wages based on the information that we produce. Oftentimes, they're doing the right thing in order for their employee base to afford to live in a home that's comfortable for them and their family. And I'll give you an example. Even in Anaheim, we have hotel and hospitality workers who start out making $23 an hour. So those jobs do exist. And that's one of the things I think is important about this report is it allows policymakers to work with businesses to really help solve some of the issues, right? Because we identify all the problems, but how do we actually make a difference? And that's what this helps with. Yeah. Another thing I think I would love to mention is just the fact that it would cost $1,800 a month to rent a 1-bedroom apartment. So that means people are spending over 30% of their income in order to pay for a place to live. And during the pandemic, I don't know about you, Jesse, but we did a lot of outdoor. I have 2 kids. You have to entertain your kids. Parks are closed. Luckily, we had a backyard, but in our neighborhood we live in a predominantly low income neighborhood in Anaheim. And there were several families who I know either lived multiple families in a 1-bedroom. Where were they going? There was a lot of inequities, I think, that the report really helped pull out, but the pandemic also created, or at least uncovered.
For sure, which explains, Jesse, like you were talking about, your option is if you are on that lower end of the wage scale, you just live further out, which means that now your commute, as opposed to 30 minutes or 45 minutes, can be 2 hours. And a lot of those folks don't have the privilege to be able to do what we're doing right now, work virtually, right? To work from home. No, you're cleaning an office and you need to do that commute somehow.
And the commute is a quality of life issue, right? So if you work further away from home, we all know traffic is back to pre-pandemic congestion. So your commute is 2 hours and you missed your child's game. You're spending your life on the freeway. So that, is really an issue for employers in this region is, we need to make sure that we have solutions so that our employees can live close to where they work.
I want to remind the audience, if you've got any questions, I know there's one from somebody in the audience that we'll get to in a second. If you have any questions, by all means, throw them into the chat. Speaking of employees, so we're in the workforce business here at Chrysalis, and we have the privilege of playing matchmaker between employers and folks that are ready, willing, and able to get back to work. And I've been at Chrysalis now for 14 years. I have never seen a time where we have such demand from employers. If it seems like every networking event I go to, when I talk to somebody and I explain what we do, oh, fantastic, I've got 5 openings. I've got 1,000 openings in the case of Disneyland. What is going on right now from what you can see that is causing this mismatch between supply and demand on the employment front?
Yeah, that's a great question. And every employer, at least the ones that we work with at OCBC, are experiencing the same thing. I think one of the things that the pandemic has definitely created is a division, right? So if you are a higher paid, educated employee, you have the opportunity to work remote. People are now seeking opportunities that are outside of where they normally would go. So that's creating openings. There was a statistic that one of our search committee members or search firms that we've worked with in the past quoted, 1 in 3 people will leave their job looking for new opportunities this year and, coming. So, that's an issue. The other thing is people are just not ready to come back to work, whether it's childcare issues. The report really helped highlight the disparities between access to childcare, affordable childcare, and a safe place for your children to go. So I think that's also an issue. There's been a gender. Women have been they've probably been impacted greater than men or people without kids. So women are unable to go back to work because a lot of the caregiving falls onto them if their kids are not going to school full time. During the pandemic, most kids who went to public school were remote learning. So that really fell onto the mom or the caregiver at home, which caused a lot of women to leave the workforce. So just getting back to work from the pipeline perspective, it's just challenging to find individuals who can come back to the workforce. But we've also heard from many of our businesses is that people want to work remote. So the pandemic has really changed the game, so to speak, right? You can't put the genie back in the bottle at this point. So we're all having to get really creative. And what we've been hearing is there are hybrid models that will be implemented for the most part for those individuals who could do their work from home. But then you do get some of the people who are at the lower wage employment that still have to go into the office. And these also tend to be the people who can't afford to get childcare at the high rate that it's at. So Jesse, anything to add on that front?
No, I would think that those are, I think a lot of the legitimate reasons. I mean, again, I think ultimately it's too soon to tell why this is happening. I think even the experts are just prognosticating, right? Because I think everyone thought, oh, it was just the generous unemployment benefits. There's this real oversimplification of why no one's going back to work. Well, the unemployment benefits have ceased, and there's not this mad dash to people entering the workplace. So I think some of the things that Natalie mentioned are more true. They're more systemic and they're longer term as to why. I mean, not only childcare, but even the status of how your kid has to stay home from school makes it complicated, right? So even if their kid is going to school, but then they have the sniffles, they have to get tested, they get taken out, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of enter the workforce in that capacity. So I think some of those things are thornier, as well as, a greater conversation about, which maybe, the pandemic allowed people to think kind of, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is this what I want to be doing with my life? And again, I think some of that is, for the fortunate and the privileged to think about, for the most part. But again, I think it is having an impact all up and down kind of the job sector and job ladders, because again, you see a lot of these openings at the lower level, to where again, there are openings. It's interesting to see kind of, are people going to put themselves in harm's way? The childcare, like Natalie mentioned, those are some of the things I think people really are truly thinking about. But all that being said, it's still people who think that they're certain as to why people aren't going back. I would be a little skeptical as for them knowing that one answer. I think it's a plethora of reasons.
Yeah, that does seem to be the thing that has everybody scratching their head. Is we thought after the middle of September things would change because of the unemployment benefit, but that is clearly shown not to be the case. A question that came up from the audience has to do with employers and their role in preparing workers for skills of the future. Based on what you've seen in your reporting and speaking with your members, where is the employer in this training role? What do they expect from new employees joining the workforce, and what are they willing to invest in to get some skin in the game on the training side?
So on the training side, it really depends on the company and the position. But what we have seen is that a lot of I saw the question in the chat, and a lot of our employers are really invested in training. They see the positive impact training has on their business growth and development. I know training is different than what it was in the past. I do recall, starting out at the LA Times, for example, and you get Sales 101 training. And if it's not an entry-level position, you may not have access to some of those training tools. But what we have seen too is a lot of our employers are doing online training. They have internal academies that employees can take. So there are a lot of those still going on. There's soft skills. We've even commissioned a report that really helped employees upskill. So if it's a job that was going from a non-technical to technical due to AI transition, like things are being automated, there are employers who are partnering or sending their workers through programs at community colleges or some of our other state schools.
Yeah, I would just add, to Denise's point, it depends, I guess I don't want to overgeneralize here, right? In the sense that in many respects, businesses are maybe training more than they ever have, and have even essentially cut out a lot of educational institutions to do so. They pretty much kind of get you in the pipeline, and they create their own curriculum, and they're giving you leadership training on that and all that other stuff. So in some ways, businesses are investing more in training. They're maybe not being as collaborative in that training, but they are doing more training than maybe ever before. I think she asked this question because on the other, it's they're afraid that you're going to poach their talent, that they invest all this training, then their competitor says, we'll pay you 50% or 30, whatever, pick whatever number above what you're already making. Now come work for us, because we know that their way also works. And now you've invested all this time and money and effort into talent, and now they kind of get pulled away. That is mainly, I think, the premise of her question. I think that's why you've seen a pullback with some employers to do so. But again, I would also say on the other hand, there seems to be an incredible investment. Maybe they're just doing a better job of keeping it secret. But that's why I think, what may have been done amongst the greater business community is that fear. is that they pulled back on training because they will invest all this time and money and effort into training, only to have that talent go elsewhere for the higher paycheck when the time comes.
Yeah, and that's where Jesse and I probably don't agree, because I do believe, especially the employers that we work with, sometimes they've had to scale back for cost, right? Because training is expensive, and a lot of times they had an individual who was dedicated to training, but I do think that if you work for a really good employer, the benefit to the employer is training, right? So if your employee is good, they love their job, they feel qualified for it, it fulfills them, great. And if you lose them, you lose the talent, then you might. But we already see that cannibalism, for lack of a better word, in industries that are lacking. So like for engineering, for example, there is a shortage of engineers. So you will see a lot of people going from one organization to another based on higher salary offers.
We see that in our sector as well. In the social sector, there's a lot of trading. And in some cases, that can be really good. We're not that big of an organization. We have 200 employees. And at some point, for somebody to get that necessary next step of skill, they do need to leave, right? But the good news is we can poach them right back 5 years later after they've gotten that experience someplace else into a higher level position. So hopefully what goes around comes around in a good way. We are at time. We could spend hours and hours talking about this. I would really encourage all of you that have been joining us today to check out this report. If you're a data and statistics nerd like I am, you will really find a lot of good information in there that sheds light not just on the Orange County economy, but actually the regional and the California economy as well. Much of this could be broadened. Natalie and Jesse, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for your great work in Orange County. We really appreciate it. And Natalie, thanks for your volunteer time with us, helping us on the Orange County Advisory Council.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And I'm just going to do a shameless plug really quick. So Jesse just commissioned a workforce indicators mini report. So visit ocbc.org to get a copy.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for all that you do, and thank you, Chrysalis, and your organization for all that you do. It's really important and very necessary.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. For those that we don't see until next year, we will be having, I'm sure, a new version of this come out in the coming months. This is our last one for this year. But please stay in touch with us over social media and through our website. We'll keep you posted on all the great stuff going on at Chrysalis. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk again soon.